I'm going to jump right in. So my provocation, to provoke, is that what it is? Provocate? I'm going to poke the bear. Let me first say I'm still very much in the last circle that I was in at the National Arts Center. I feel very immersed in that. I feel still very much in process with all of the amazing wisdom and voices that were shared there, and just also the gravity of the opportunity is. I'm going to use the word humbling. It's taken me 45 years to really understand what that is, to be humble. I'm humbled before the teachings that my brother just shared with us a few moments ago about the woman being the first teacher, and then from there the land and so on. And what I've come to discover, and what I come to understand as being humble, it means understanding my connection to the circle and understanding my place within the circle of creation, which he so eloquently put in a number of different ways. It doesn't mean that you're passive. It doesn't mean that you're submissive. It just means that you're humble and you understand that. So as a man, it's taken me a long time to fully understand what that is, but I do understand what that is from the teachings of our people, and it's empowering. It's empowering. I was humbled again today in the circle just by the sheer energy and passion of the artists that were in the circle. And there are a number of things that have really affected me and really stayed with me. I'll tell my story in a little bit, but I just wanted to start with just a few points that were shared. The one being the idea of reconciliation, and I don't know her name. Jill so beautifully put it today, is that to have reconciliation, there has to be some repairing. There has to be some act of repairing what was destroyed, and that hasn't happened yet. That repairing has not happened yet. We're still on the precipice of that repairing. And then conciliation can happen. So I'm very affected by that, because that's the truth of where we are. That's really the real beautiful truth of where we are in this moment. So it's up for us to carry that wisdom, to carry that knowledge forward. I want things repaired, yes. I want things repaired for me in my journey as an Ongahoe man and as a First Nations artist in this country. My grandparents were fluent Mohawk speakers. That's where it stopped. They had the language. So it's that close to me. So my provocation about has Aboriginal performance reach critical mass? No, not at all. Not at all, because there's much repairing to do before we can reach our critical mass. There's much empowering to do before we reach our critical mass. And there's much of providing us, we talked a lot about in that circle about a space, an Indigenous space that's now being created. We need to be in the space. We need to be in that space in a continual, sustained time to start to rebuild those things for us, ourselves. I come out of a professional arts practice that's rooted in visual art and then into performance, storytelling, narrative, and then into dance, choreography. From that practice, I came to Ottawa in 2002 to fill a role as program officer at the Canada Council for the Arts in the Dance section. I came out of years of training at the Banff Centre and the Aboriginal Arts program, the Aboriginal Dance Training Program, where at the center of that program and that programming were traditional artists bringing their traditional forms and sharing that with a group of young artists who are eager to learn and to advance their abilities as dancers and choreographers and storytellers within a dance format. So I assumed another role, and now I'm coming back to the practice after 8 years within that particular institution. Within that time, I was there for 8 years, within that time there was the establishment of 6 annually supported Aboriginal dance companies which were situated across the country. So I think we have to understand that we're still at the very beginning generations of our resurgence. They're just the very beginning. And Yves Sui talked about the amazing things we've done with so little to this point. So I think we really have to be honest about that, in that we've done a great deal with very little, but still there's so much more to go. There's so much capacity that we can reach and that we have to rebuild for ourselves and for our communities that I don't think that we've even, well, I don't know, but there's a long way to go before we reach that critical mass. Part of that critical mass is also being able to have the time and the space to express, but for also for others to hear and to listen, to really listen to us and hear us. Those folks at the National Arts Centre today began their journey of listening today. And it was beautiful, but there's so much more to go. So I appreciate being in this circle with all of you here who are listening, who have come to the circle to listen and hopefully share. When I left the council, I went to be a part of a fine space called the Wabano Center for Aboriginal Health, which is a community health clinic, which also, in such an innovative way, layers in social programming to the base of a community health clinic. I worked with Wabano as the cultural coordinator for about 2 years, and I understood at that time how important our expression is, and how important it is for us to diversify within this community here. The funding agencies and the programs that I was trying to further, I could only do so much in terms of working with the arts within that format, because it's a community health clinic. But there is the attitude of, well, you're there, you just do it there, just do it at Ottawa, just do it at Wabano. Those spaces are set up for what they need to do. They have their own purpose and their own intent. As an artist, we need our own space to do that as well, to advance that. So I left the Wabano Center and I started to work as a producer. At least I thought I was, or I had the idea that I wanted to be a producer and a presenter, because I knew of the extent and the richness of work that's across the country. But we don't see it here in Ottawa. We don't see it. We see a little. We see someone used the term today. Picking the best, or picking the best. But there's so much work that we don't see. So I still carry that dream. I still carry that dream of enabling space here within the national capital for our art to flow through. It was a daunting task, and it was something that I just couldn't do alone. I couldn't do it on my own. I couldn't survive. So in 2015, right at the beginning, right at the new year, I said, I'm going to just start my practice again, and I'm going to start making work, and I'm going to start performing. Somehow 2015 was filled with performance. The end of 2015 was filled with program applications, and now I'm seeing some of the fruits of that. So we'll go forward and create at least 2 new works over 2016. I want to be ready for 2017. I want to see a full cycle of Aboriginal programming in the National Capital for 2017, right through the seasons, starting with our storytelling time. Starting with the winter time is where we tell our stories. And then cycle right through the seasons. That's what I'd like to see. So, have we reached critical mass? No. We've taken a few steps, and we've been resilient, and we've been committed, and our resolve is very strong. We need our allies, both amongst our people as well as the non-native cultures. So I think that's what I have to share. I'd love to have a dialogue. I'd love to have feedback and talk from here. So, yeah.
Humble. It's a song. Well, I'm quite humbled by all the talent that's around this room. And so I'm very honored to be here. I think that just the fact that we're talking to NEC is a good thing, and it's a paving the way to reconciliation, quite obviously. I've been a performer my whole life. I started singing at the age of 5 when the nuns heard my voice. No, I didn't start singing. I started singing at the age of 3. And they caught me by the time I was 5 in kindergarten and put me in the choir, put me as a soloist. And I've been singing ever since. And I never really thought of it until a little while ago, a few years ago. What was I singing when I was 3 years old? My adoptive mom is from Montreal, and I lived in Eastern Ontario, and we'd go to Montreal all the time, and I'd be sitting in the back seat of the car, coming back, looking at the moon and saying, "Hey, Daddy, look, the moon's following us." And I'd be singing, and I'd just start singing. And the stuff coming out today, now, I realize were songs from my ancestors. And my dad would reach over and turn off the radio and just listen to me. So that was very encouraging. I wanted to do theater, but I couldn't remember the words to anything because I was trained then afterwards as a instrumentalist and a vocalist reading music. When you read music, you don't memorize the music. So you don't memorize the words. And it was somebody that came up and said, "Hey, we're doing native theater at Ottawa. Would you like to?" I said, "I can't do theater. You memorize." I can't do it. "Oh, but there's tricks." "Oh, really?" And then this Mr. Barry Karp, who's a fantastic theater coach, and started coaching us. And then I actually went to the Ottawa School of Speech and Drama and studied under him, which was brilliant. Gave me the confidence, gave us the tools, the tricks, doing the Italian. What a fun thing to do. So out of that was born an actress, a singing actress. Wow, this is fun. And my first play was playing Ernestine Shuswap Gets Her Trout. And that was Annabelle Okanagan. By fortune, a little while around that time, my work took me to Kamloops. And I could see for myself what he was talking about. So I was completely hooked. That was it. I met the people. I met the Shuswap. I saw the rivers. Even Kitzbios up there, whatever. I didn't say it right. But. So this was a lot of fun, and playing second to Ernestine sitting over there, Susan Heavens. We had an absolute ball. It created family. We had people at Ottawa laughing their heads off, crying their faces off, and we thought, whoa, we made people cry. Wow, how powerful is this? And at the time I thought, wow, there's a lot of healing here. Because when tears happen, there's healing, there's growth. I believe that without tears, there is no growth. So that was great fun. And of course, doing Thompson Highway is a big, hero of mine. So doing one of his plays was tremendous. My second time was Dry Lips Ought to Move to Kapuskasing. And I played La Croix. So I'm playing a man. Second place, I'm playing a man. It's like, this is bizarre. And I had such a good time. We got physical and everything else. And oh my goodness, it's just like, I scared everybody. And that was semi-professional because we went and went to St. Catharines and played at the university. I got paid. Said, what? My second play? It's semi-professional. Nuts. And the third time, of course, our good friend Suzanne here contacted at least 65 people around the community, 27 and whittled down to 23 of us at the First Nations Exchange, which was a tremendous experience. Again, the
Four
train,
Nations Exchange.
what did I say?
First Nations.
First Nations.
Four Nations.
The Four Nations Exchange. Thank you. And that was tremendous. Months of theater school at the NAC, so enriching, and that really gave a lot of confidence to all the participants. Created great friendships, dialogue, and it was, and of course, doing King Lear, a lot of, just like film. Oh yeah, and I did some film too, and videos, but that was whatever. That's not as important as this. But, getting up, getting ready, and waiting, we really exercised that. And learning from each other as we were in character, and we're still good friends today, and it really reinforced. So there was a lot of, again, healing in that. And then the performance, Augie, and all that. He was, when I met him, and I realized that how close, and we're all the same, we're all one family, and he says, yeah, I'm from Montreal, and I had a mère, and he starts speaking to me in French. I'm going, holy crap. And he says, yeah, I used to hang out in Hawkesbury. I said, when? Like when I was there. I said, whoa. It was so weird. So the connectivity, the connectedness that we all have, we exercise that all the time. Whenever we're together and sharing, but sharing in a way, sharing our souls like we do when we're performing together. Very important. So that's my background in that, and that's what got me, I think, here around this table. But I want to add to what you said about the reconciliation and the healing. I think we're a little bit more advanced than you say. I think that there is room now. I work in government, and I'm very glad for this new government. It was a very painful 10 years, I must assure you. I am the chair of the Aboriginal Employee Network, where I work, in my department. We have instilled 3 days of programming now. We're bringing in people, and before I arrived, there was a circle there before that was very exclusive. If you weren't Indigenous, you really didn't feel included. I did not go to residential school. I felt excluded. Today, we're welcoming everybody, even those people that think they have a little bit of Indian blood. Yes, please come in. Let's explore that, because everybody's got a little bit of Indian blood, right? Everyone. If you're Canadian, if your family, like my French side's been here since 1630, and I have a direct conduit to those people. And I know who my Indian grandmothers were on that side. And that, but you know, the family, a lot of my family, my ancestors, those people, totally ignore that or will deny. And I've seen that a lot in a lot of people, which is so sad. So on Tuesdays, we have a drum group. On Wednesdays, we have an elder come in. She's Algonquin, of course, and she's bilingual, of course, because she's from here. And on Thursdays, we have crafts. We do this every single week. I used to work on the corner of my desk. Now my work is failing. That's not failing, but let's say I leave work at 7 o'clock now instead of 5. But it's so enriching. And every week, we have more and more people. And every week, the dialogue gets even more elastic. And we have tears almost every week around that circle. Very, very powerful. Started that 16 years ago. I was at Wabano, and we started theater there with our friend Doreen Stevens and Nyla Carpentier, who's now in BC. And the play was called The Blood Remembers. You probably remember that, eh? You were here for that. And that was done at Wabano and in the basement. Not a very good space to do it, but we did lights, and I think we had a smoke machine. We had all kinds of stuff going on. It was so cool. It didn't last very long, and we made a lot of people cry. A lot of people were very disturbed by that, and we knew that there was something powerful, because then at the art therapy group that we had, there was a lot more of those people coming around. Art therapy, again. So I guess my message is therapy through art. As a singer, now as a theater person, I know that it has healed me in a lot of ways. Being told that I was less than, being called all these things. I've suffered a lot of racism. Being French, you know, if it wasn't about being French, or being an Indian, being an Ontarian French rather than a Quebec French, you name it, I was always wrong. I was always not right. I was always less than. Well, screw you. I am not less than, right? I'm even more, because I have 4 parents. Think about that. You know, I've got my real parents. One of them is in the spirit world. My father was murdered on the res. And that's another part of healing. And that res is Wikwemiko, right behind the ruins. He was found. So that's a very painful thing. So even going back to that place, for me, there's always healing there. That there was theater there. My cousin Deke Peltier, Kevin, and Violet Rosa Pitawanakwet, my aunt, seeing them on stage, I just about peed myself. I just couldn't believe how funny these people could be, knowing how tragic it was for them, their lives, living at Wikwemiko. When I say Wikwemiko, and I'll take the opportunity here because I was asked by my elders to always correct people, to say Wikwemiko and not Wiki, because Wiki means nothing. Wikwemiko means Bay of Beavers. Miko is beaver in our language. So, Wikwemiko. Wikwemiko. Yeah. Yeah. They say Wikwe-don, around the bay. Wikwemiko, the Bay of Beavers. And so I see the healing all the time, you know. I guess it's because I need it too. You're never healed. You're always on your journey to healing. And I'd like this to continue. 150 years of this Canada next year. Good opportunity to probably raise another play, perhaps. Something storytelling, even before the space is created. maybe we should look at that. So that's what I have to say for now.
I guess it's my turn. Okay. Have we reached critical mass? Well, the first thing I'd like to put out there is, does everybody know what that means, critical mass? Because I had to ask Cole, I said, what the heck does critical mass mean? When I think of mass, I think of Catholics, and that could be critical. That's from my personal experience, so I apologize to anybody whom I've offended. But he explained, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there he is, Cole, that it's a scientific term, and I failed science and math. So from what I understood, it's about explosion, right? So has Indigenous theater reached the point of explosion? And I would say no. It's always going to explode. I think that there are opportunities opening up now for further explosion and further exploration of Indigenous theater and Indigenous worldview. I see that suddenly there seems to be a great hunger and thirst from mainstream Canadians to find out what First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people are all about, and what our worldview is, and why we're so diverse, and what our spirituality looks like, or what our teachings are, what our secret societies are all about. And I think there's a real hunger for that knowledge. And I remember a teaching long ago about, based on that medicine wheel, and that the youngest people represented on that wheel is in the white direction, the European direction. And because they're the youngest on that wheel, they are much like the adolescents of the human family. The black direction is the oldest, and then the red direction, the Indigenous peoples of the world, are after the black peoples of the world, and then it's the Asian peoples of the world. And the youngest is the white direction, and they're much like the adolescents of the human family. And like adolescents, they are very impulsive and curious and energetic and often reckless. And so I think about that hunger and that thirst for knowledge. Sometimes it feels like it's going too fast, and they're asking a lot from us to respond, to educate, and to inform, and to enlighten, and to collaborate. And I feel that, whoa, we need to do that amongst ourselves first and foremost, because as it was stated so eloquently this afternoon by Kalumpa Bob, and just again reiterated by J.P. Longboat here, that we're in the process of reparation. We are in the process of reclaiming and rekindling our traditional ways of knowing and being. And so much was lost. Thankfully, so much was preserved by going underground by very strong leaders of the past and of the present. And so it's kind of like, it's very fast. It's very fast. And it might create some explosions in certain directions, but I don't think, coming from an insider's perspective, that we've reached critical mass. Because until our communities are exploding and exploring, and with the joy of that traditional knowledge and the pride and the revitalization of languages, and the greatest missing link for me is the spirituality, because many, 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 many of our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples are still feeling the impact of an imposed Christianity. And with that comes fear. And I was raised Catholic, and I know what it is to fear God, to be taught to fear God. To me, it's not where I want to be. When I think about the power of the arts and the power of how the arts heal, I'm going to quote myself because I once wrote, "Artists cry the softest." They cry the softest because they can take something beautiful, something painful, and they can turn it into something beautiful. Like the ballet of a residential school, like the powerful poetry of Rita Jo, Mi'kmaq poet Rita Jo. These are painful stories, but through the arts, they were made accessible to a widely diverse audiences, and they were told in beautiful ways, because through the arts, it's a safe place to be. And coming from the perspective of an educator, education is my background, my professional background. The arts, to me, is always about educating. And I think in theater performances or in dance performances, in the matter of, let's take last night, for example, or tonight, if you're going to see Moon Lodge, Margot Kane's one-woman show. It's being performed again tonight at 7:30 by a talented young Indigenous actor. In 50 minutes, 50 minutes, you learn about the 60s scoop and the impact of being taken from your family and being raised in foster care and being completely denied your Indigenous identity in 50 minutes. So the power of the arts as a means of educating is it's heartfelt learning, and it goes right through your heart and spirit, and therefore it remains there. And I've had, in the work that I do, I've had academics tell me, I've been studying this for 4 years or 6 years or 9 years, and I've learned more in 4 hours through the arts than I've learned in all my years of studying it. So I want to bring it into a local context, because we are here to talk about local Indigenous theater or performance arts. And when Cole asked me about what's going on here locally, there are so many wonderful artists here, because all of our people are artists. Historically and traditionally, culturally, everything that we do, that we did, was artistic expression. The teepees from the people of the prairies, the wigwams, the beadwork on the footwear and the vests and the clothing and the pipes, the way they were carved, and the records of stories on those sticks. What would they be called? Jerry, you probably remember. I can't think of the word now. Those, not wampum, but that's art too. That's artistic expression too. Wampum belts, depicting treaties through visual artwork, beadwork. It's all an expression of art. So it's innate within all of us. So locally, there's a hunger for artistic expression, because it is healing. And I was reminded in our pre-conversation with Catherine that about 15 years ago, I was contracted to do a drama as therapy program at Wabano. And it was called Street Theater Company, because every participant in that group was literally from the streets. And I said, whoa, and I had to develop the program. And I said, well, it's got to come from a traditional foundation. And I said, and these people need humor. So we started with traditional, with an opening, I called it a circle check, and then traditional teachings to follow. And then we moved into the theater component, and we created original theater together. And it was taking a look at the history of colonization from a comedic perspective. And we laughed and we laughed and we laughed. But I'll tell you, those talking circles, those check-in circles, when I would say, what kind of energy are you bringing into the group dynamic today? So that I knew as the facilitator whose strength or weakness I need to be conscious of, whom I could count on in the creative process of the afternoon component. And the people would start, and I would hear things like, I slept on a park bench last night. Somebody else would say, a friend of mine, which happens to be the 6th friend of mine, committed suicide this morning. The next person may have said, my child was taken away from me by Family and Children's Services. And this is what went around that circle. And these people came, and these people said in so many ways, this drama program is the reason I get out of bed in the morning. It's the reason why I'm living. That's how powerful it was to bring the arts to the people of this local community here. And we have the largest Inuit population in Ottawa outside of the north. And we have First Nations peoples here from all across Turtle Island. And we have Métis people here. And I'm Métis from Quebec, which is a whole other cultural identity. I'm not Métis from the prairie provinces. And that's something that has to be explored. So we are diverse people. But there is a thirst for artistic expression again, because it is innate within us. And when I was asked to participate in the production of King Lear in 2012, and I was asked to coordinate and be that cultural liaison, that community liaison, 65 people responded to that call from the local community. 65 people. And so there's an interest here. There's a need here. We do need our own venue. We need opportunity. We need collaborations with professionals, because the National Arts Centre brings in wonderful Indigenous talent from across the nation and beyond. But the local people want to get involved too. And because we're a grassroots community, there's so much talent. And that's how I got to know Greg. Because we do fundraising in this community all the time, whether it's for murdered and missing Indigenous women, or whether it's for members of the community that have had tragedies, or whether it's for a land claim that we're very much involved with right now to this day. And that's when people come out, and we have open mics, and we have stand-up comics, and we have spoken word poets, and we have storytellers. So we have the arts that are alive and well. They might not be groomed or educated or trained, but the interest and the natural talent and enthusiasm is there, whether to pursue it as community and professional collaborations like what happened in King Lear, or whether to collaborate artistically amongst ourselves. So there is an interest here, and there's talent here, and it's an untapped talent. And so we do need to nurture that. And until we start nurturing our community members and our local communities and our youth, and then and only then will I feel like we're truly on the way to exploding and like a shooting star, or like once again, I don't know science, right? I failed science. But don't we have light beams that go on for billions of years? So when we do explode, I'd like it to last at least 1 billion years.
Hi, Kachimagwich. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Catherine. My name is Greg Dreaver, Mr. Wasses. As you may have heard, about the 60s scoop business, that's how I was raised. I was raised in a foster home. And I was only 8 miles away from my actual original reserve. The people that raised me were 50 years older than me. And when my foster father came to what's now Canada, they stopped there because this small town in Saskatchewan, because that's where the tracks ended. So that's where they ended up, him and his brothers. That's where they stayed. And he used to go to the edge of town of where the tracks ended. There was a group of natives that would camp there. And at the time, they'd trade anything metal, anything cloth, for these big, called them like crockery, made out of porcelain. They're from England. And they'd put cloth over it and tie it. And it was prairie dog stew. And the old man told me that years later they came and they poisoned all the prairie dogs because they had eliminated all the buffalo from the prairies. And people were subsisting and really thriving, living good off these prairie dogs. So that's how they survived that first summer, that first time they got off the train, basically, because it was during the first drought. So I collected a lot of stories off that old man. And he was good friends with John Diefenbaker and other people, and I learned a lot from that old man. And it wasn't until I moved to Calgary, it wasn't until I ran into a cousin who told me I had actual biological family in Edmonton. And that's when I went to Edmonton. It was about 1991. I connected with my father eventually in 93, and I met several cousins, several brothers and sisters, and they were street people. And up until that point, I thought I had it so bad being raised the way I was. The abuse that I had suffered, the abuse that I went under, I thought I had it so bad. But when I heard from my biological sisters and brothers, the abuse, the mental anguish, the prostitution, the IV drug use, and the prisons. One of my brothers was there when they, what's called a pin cushion. And this guy was stabbed over 100 times and he lived. And he even had a Cree word for this guy. It meant like the devil. I don't know if it's dark out. You're not supposed to say certain things after it gets dark. But somehow this monster lived. And his name was Clifford Olson. And that was in Prince Albert Penitentiary. So when I'm around my family, I listen to these stories of these jails, of these streets, of people that are long gone now, people who met their end with a hatchet to the head, all kinds of stuff. You know, women that were found died of exposure on the edge of Saskatoon, basically left out there by the cops. You know, different things like that. That's real, that happened. But for me, thinking of the arts, thinking of this critical mass, I see something beyond like what my friend Catherine, what Suzanne have shared, something beyond healing. You know, in a past life, I went about 20 years just learning from knowledge keepers, being scolded, being told, Greg, you're worse than a damn white man. But being raised the way I was by these people 50 years older than me, I had thick skin. I could say to a mushroom cookum, granny, grandpa, I'm sorry. How do I do this right? How do you want your fire made? How do you want your pipe filled? What do you want to do with this poor deer we just shot? You know? And because I was like that, they're able to teach me. They're able to teach me. So through all that experience, I have to share, like being around those knowledge keepers, those ceremonial people, I never learned about misogyny. I never learned about a lot of these things. And these things are so important. It wasn't until a recent time being around students, university students, activist students, art students at the University of Ottawa that I started hearing about misogyny, that I started hearing about these things, you know? And for me, growing up the way I did, it wasn't until I met this one old couple that said, Greg, you always come here. You bring us the cloth, you bring us the tobacco, you bring us the sweetgrass, you bring us a gift, and you're always talking about this foster home. You're always talking about this terrible childhood. What we want you to do is come and tell us something good about your childhood, something good. And up until that point, that was the basis of my relationships. I'd meet someone like Suzanne or somebody or Sante or somebody. And right away I'd share about my negative childhood, my negative life. And they would share. That was the basis of my relationships with anything anything I ever did. So through this old couple, through gritted teeth, I had to share that, hey, you know what? I could read and write before I ever went to school. You know, I remember praying with tears to live to be 6 years old. I thought, if I can just get to school, then you can take me, God. You know, I remember those times. I remember praying to meet my family one time, and I thought of my mother, whom I didn't really remember. And I was allowed to play outdoors that day. The bruises had healed. See, when I got a beating, I wasn't allowed out of the house, because if someone asked what happened, I could get taken away and put in juvenile detention, taken away from my foster home. So when the bruises were healed, I was allowed to play outside that day. And sure enough, the social worker's car pulled up, and out of it came a beautiful Native woman. And I knew right then, that's my mother. And it was. That was the only time I met her. She passed away after that. But that's when I knew that this prayer thing works. But I had to go back into my childhood. I remember everything good about it. Every time one of those non-Native people that we love so much, settler allies, whatever, came and took me out of that foster home, took me tobogganing, took me to a movie, took me to the lake. Those were angels in human form. So that's what I shared a little bit about opening up here with the smudge. What I see is we need empowerment. The young people that I work with, the young people that I listen to, the young people that are teaching me to be a better person, they don't need healy-feely culture vulture groups. They're looking for empowerment. And everybody that's here today has experience in theater, in arts, in film, and television, the gamut of the arts. You're the ones that are leaving the deep tracks. What we have right now, what our friend JP explained, is we're just on the, we're there. There's stuff opening up for us. We're starting to see where we can walk. And it's like a field of snow. I went to a sweat lodge ceremony one time, and at the end of it, I told the old man, one of my friends, a mentor of mine, I told him what I was doing. I went in the sweat lodge. I had a pair of white mucklucks, white grain leather mucklucks, rabbit fur trim, beadwork on the toes, on the tops. And I told him what I was doing, that these Russian Jewish guys, their cousin has a company called Canada Goose Parkas, and they want to launch a brand, and they want me to work in brand marketing as a brand architect. So I explained what we're going to do. We're going to launch in Germany. The following week, we're going to launch in Las Vegas. Launch this footwear brand, Aboriginal footwear brand. We came up with a name. It means the creator's voice, Manitoba, with an H on the end. And I told him about that. He says, you know what, Greg? He says, look out the door there. So we looked out the door of this lodge we were in, and there was pure white snow. It was in a place called Blue Quills College in Alberta. We're hoping to make like the first independent university. It's coming. He says, look at that snow. There's not a track in it. He says, what you're going to be doing with this branding, with this marketing, with the sales, make deep tracks, my young friend, because there's going to be people coming behind you. So when I look at the people I see around the room, and I see my friend Leslie, Beverly, Catherine, are there people who went through what I went through? I just got to say thank you so much for King Lear. Thank you so much for what you're doing. I wish I could sit through Moon Lodge tonight. But with everything I've done, I still don't feel strong enough to deal with these things. But someday, when I'm strong enough, I want to see those plays. I want to see those shows. And most of all, I want my 2 kids to see it. Maybe they'll understand what their dad went through. So, with all you're doing, let's have some empowerment, please. The government will enforce healing. I went through addictions courses to the point of being able to facilitate addictions. I could train facilitators. I went through life skills courses. I could train life skills facilitators. I started off at a film festival in Edmonton called Dream Speakers Festival. I was there for 5 years, in front of the camera, behind the camera, cultural advisor doing these type of things, working with all the artists, working with all the filmmakers, working with everybody, and just being a helper. The guy who was just there, Greg, bing, done. Greg, bing, done. Get it done, make it happen. I've always had that role. Growing up in that foster home, those were British foster parents. The foster mom was in a convent till she was 21. She got out of the convent, right into the army, right into World War II, met my foster father, that was it. So growing up, I could put on a really thick, believable British accent. So we'd play cowboys and Indians, and I'd be the butler. So now coming around Indigenous people or Native people, it's that age group that's older than me. You know, it's that age group that's older than me, those knowledge keepers. I have that thick skin. I have to look back in my life and think of all the gifts I have, all the knowledge that was passed on to me, all those angels in human form that helped me out, all those good memories. So I hope and pray the artists, the people that are here today, the creative people that are here today, that you go back and you remember all the good things about us and you bring that forward. The brilliance of who we are. 80% of all food in the world comes from us. Democracy as we know it comes from us. Whatever we do, it's going to be done. You know, these things called gravitational waves, where this smoke touches. When they first came up with this theory, Newton, some other people, as soon as they were able to articulate it, the first guy articulated it, he was a mystic. He didn't have the math. But Newton and some other people, they had the math. They had the math. So then it became real because of the math. Not 10 years after that, the telescope was invented. So what we're doing is called a telescope. We have a ceremony back home, and we use a tiny little object. We can travel places. My first telescope, I told my foster parents, do you remember that lake we went to when we were kids? And I told them about the lake, even how the road went right down by the lake. Told them about a little raft out there where people would jump and dive off of. Told them about the cabin. It was like an airplane without the wings on it. And I described inside that cabin, Three Stooges comic books, the bedspread, the curtains, everything that was in that cabin. And I said when we left in this station wagon. I described that station wagon. And I said it was really weird because a deer jumped over our car. And my foster sister said, you know, I was in the back of the station wagon, and I seen a little white dot. And I looked up just as that deer jumped over us. And my foster mother said, you know, you weren't even with us the last time we went to that lake. And my foster sister said, yeah, wouldn't even been born yet. So that's my earliest memory, and those are those telescopes. You know, when you think about light, when we first seen light, when we could explain light with the non-natives anyways, we understand it as like a form of time traveling. And that when your picture's taken, what's it taken with? It's taken with light. So when you do something, when it's recorded like this, you're speaking to the future always. We, as Indigenous people, the original people, we are the time travelers. We understand time in a different perspective. We have a lot to offer. And we already are making a huge difference. A huge, huge difference. And what my friend JP said is so right. We're just at the beginning of it. And this critical mass, you know, anybody who understands physics, anybody who understands science, anybody who's a mathlete here? Anybody compete in math? Nobody? Okay. Wrong crowd. But when you understand these physics and that, you understand that, yeah, there's definitely going to be an explosion here. And it's going to take everyone in this room to make that explosion happen. And I believe it's going to be a real powerful and a really strong explosion. I'd like to see kindergarten, grade 1, learn about LGBTQ people, you know, not as a negative, but as something to be honored, something to be respected. I'd like them to learn about misogyny. I'd like to them to learn about a lot of things, not to be hurt by it, not to be triggered by it, because that's healing. You know, when I took all those self-development courses, one of the things they do is we'd have to inner child journey. We'd have to relive all our anguish, all our pain, all our hurt. And I remember being so broken up, I threw up even. I remember being so broken up during those sessions with different teachers, different healers. But all it did was compartmentalize, compress. So now when you hear on APTN news, residential schools, foster care, child abduction, children and family services, triggers. So if there's anybody here who still thinks that is an accident, that the government of Canada had nothing to do with that, that policy wasn't developed over in Tunney's pasture at Health Canada, so it would cause that effect through truth and reconciliation, then wow, you guys have a lot of work ahead of you. And like I said, as a helper, as a butler, as a concierge, if you ever need help, let me know. If you need 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people to march on the hill in support of Indigenous arts, let me know. I'm right here in Anishnaabe-Aki, right here in a 613, the 819, and I know how to get people activated. Because for myself, I don't come across as a healer. I don't come across as any of that. I'm not. I'm far from it. On my biological side, my father's side, we come from Medewan people. As the non-natives moved, we'd move. And we settled in Slave Lake, Alberta originally. And the gentleman I'm named after, Mr. Wass, was born 1796. And he was our original chief. He signed our treaty in 1876. In 1820, he seen the white buffalo in Turtle Mountain area. He held a Sundance. At the same time, a meteorite crashed out of the sky. We have that meteorite. So it was a great prophecy of 7 generations ahead. So I'm exactly 6 generations. My children are 7 generations. My children's children are going to benefit by everything being done here today. That's the importance of it. Then on my mom's side, I originate from a guy named Machaho. And the reason they called him Bad Owl is because he always had a smile on his face. Always had a smile on his face. As a young kid, the older boys, the Young Warrior Society, they took willows because this kid is weird. This kid is messed up. Look at him. I've never heard that kid cry. So they took these willows and they went at him and they whipped him with these willows. And the story was he ran away from them laughing. Didn't hit me hard enough. So those young warriors knew, hey, there's something special about this guy. So he adopted this name Machaho, Bad Owl. So they protected him right till he was an old man. And this old man was the last of them, not a healer, an empowerer. There's a huge difference between a sorcerer and a healer and an empowerer. So this empowerer, Machaho, if people tried to hurt him, right away their faces would twist. Their legs would break. Some of them even died on the spot. But they were strong enough to send that energy to him. He'd just twitch. Hi, miasin, namatskomun. Astomote that one who's sick. Bring that one who's sick. And he wouldn't send it back to whoever sent it to him. He wouldn't pollute the air, wouldn't pollute the water, the earth. What he'd do is he'd use that energy. He'd use that energy to doctor someone or to use it for everybody. Because to him, there was no such thing as bad medicine. There was no such thing as bad medicine. Even though the other side of my family was already using herbs, Medewan, to hurt each other. To him, there was no such thing as bad medicine. He was the last Nehiao what we call people who follow a spiritual path, Nehial. Nehial wak, a white pine pole. We still do that ceremony. It's like a pluralization or more than one. Nehial wak. Nehial watso in our nation. Nehial wind, you speak of the spirit. So he was the last of them, they said, the last medicine chief. And he didn't use smudges, he didn't use a pipe, nothing like that. So when that energy hit him, he'd use it for good. And whoever sent it to him would never be able to send it to him again. So that's how we inherited all these bundles. We inherited these pipes. My one uncle has a pipe. It has a date stamped on it. It was the second pipe after the white buffalo calf pipe. We have Big Bear's pipe. We have a lot of these different pipes, these sacred items. So those weren't originally ours. So they all have to be repatriated. So what my uncles do now is they have these ceremonies that take all night. And they acknowledge all of creation. And through that, we're told where these things have to go back to. And guess what? There's people that are preparing themselves to receive these gifts. So what my friend JP said again, we're there. It's coming. Prepare, prepare, prepare. And it may happen without any electricity. No electricity. You'll never see electricity again. What are people going to eat? What are they going to do? That day is coming. If you think it's going to be like we're going to be flying through the air like the Jetsons, I think you're going to have another thing coming. Keep thinking like that, because there's other of us that aren't doing that. We're prepared. You know, when I look at a moose, when I look at even a cat, if I look at a raccoon, I know how to acknowledge that spirit. I know how to take that apart. And we can be eating pretty fast, boys. You know, we'll get that fire going. We're going to be eating. So that's important too. It's like what my friend Suzanne shared. We can't separate these things. There's got to be a way to bring them all together. You know, where's the film? Where's the play about the first Indigenous Prime Minister of Canada? A woman who's two-spirit, who's military trained, you know, who has a black belt in karate and can kick ass. And she's our Prime Minister. Where's that play? We need that empowerment. Where's the play about a crew of 6 guys and 6 women? They go across the country and they rob armored trucks to fund the revolution. Where's that play? Where's that movie? That's what our kids need to see. And I believe in this room here, as the circle grows and grows, wherever you guys go, you're going to go to other circles. Because what comes around, goes around. And if we learned anything from the mound builders, the people that made plantations and civilizations, the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Incans, civilization is cursed. Because what goes up must come down. So as hunter-gatherers, artists, be a hunter-gatherer. Because what comes around, goes around. And as hunter-gatherers, you never left the garden. You are the garden. You are the trees, you are the plants, you are the knowledge seeders. The knowledge seeders. Your plays, your careers, they plant those seeds. You know, one of the first things I was in was a television production called H2O. It was with Paul Gross, Due South, and another guy named Charles Benami, the foremost Francophone director, producer guy. And I didn't have a speaking part, but it was a cool gig. We wore camouflage. We were Cree warriors. We were driving quads. We had AK-47s. We blow up a dam, and we cause widespread chaos. All the power grid goes out. They declare martial law, and the Americans take over Canada because of our water. But that was the play, you know? And through it all, the director said, "You, come here." He said, "I want you to sit beside this light. You're listening to the radio. Feel the light. Feel the light like it's warmth." This is Charles Benami. And sure enough, the only guy who gets shown the most in that is me with my stupid face there. So it's just funny. And recently I was in a television production called Pregnant at 17, and I played a police officer. So it was so nice to wear a police uniform the hat. I was part of the 55th precinct. I had the gun, the badge, the walkie-talkie. There's a non-native actor, local actor. He played the other cop. So he was Corporal Cup of Coffee, and I was Constable Bag of Donuts. And we just got along with everybody on the set. Everybody knew who I was. So I love doing that type of stuff. But my day job, if I have a day job, it's emceeing powwow. It's being the MC. Okay, hey, everybody, welcome one and all. Here we go. Okay, host drum, take it away. Here we go. All right. I love doing that, as you can tell. And I wore my uniform today, my MC uniform. I love doing that. And if I'm not MCing, I'm the arena director, or I get to dance it. I love, love, love dancing powwow. I love it. You know, when I first heard powwow, I didn't know what the heck they were doing. What the heck are they saying? What the heck are they singing? You know, I tell people nowadays that I'm part white, and they don't believe me. I say, I am. I'm part white. You know, and they don't believe me. You know, but anyways, with that, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much, Cole. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Thank you so much for our community coming out, and I look forward to being involved in any capacity with IPAA. Becoming a member. If you need a guy like me, let me know. I'm definitely down with it. And anybody needs to chat, you can find me. Cole, anybody needs to chat to somebody and just a pair of ears and offer you some insight, definitely. You know, you mentioned August Schellenberg. One of the first television productions or anything I was involved with was Augie. It was at Dream Speakers Festival. It was 92 in Edmonton. And we did a short piece, and we filmed it, and we showed it at the gala. And I remember that very well because there was a guy named Bo Svensson. Has anyone heard of Bo Svensson? Swedish actor, former Swedish Olympian, big freaking guy, huge. He's like 9 feet tall. So he's there with one of my friends, a mentor of mine, an elder of mine. He's since passed away, Jimmy Herman. Does anyone remember Jimmy Herman, north of 60? The old man, old Joe? So he brings in this Bo Svensson. So we have a breakfast meeting, and everybody's arguing because Bo wants to make this film with Jimmy. You know, this is after Dances with Wolves, and he wants to make this film with Jimmy. And right away, all the Native people are, oh, you can't show that. That wouldn't be culturally or protocol. La, 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 on and on and on. It turns into a shouting match. So I'm just sitting there listening to all this. I go, hey, why don't we do a talking circle? So Bo Svensson goes, what the is a talking circle? So I explained what a talking circle was. And he goes, okay, so I got to be last to share? Why can't I share first? I go, just, Bo, please. So anyways, we went around the circle. Everybody shared. So by the time we got back to Bo, this is the breakfast meeting, he goes, this is brilliant. What a brilliant process. Everybody that's here tonight, I'm buying you all dinner this evening. After your workshops come back, I'll have the whole thing catered. I'll buy everybody dinner. So we're like, yeah, for food, yeah. Everyone's like artists. You know how rich artists are. So we came back that evening for dinner. He says, guess what I did, folks? Before we get going here, I just want to say I made a call to Los Angeles. And I phoned up a friend of mine who's trying to get a production done. It's over $200 million production. It's the biggest thing ever done in film and television, period. You know, the biggest production ever. And what he did is he basically appropriated what we did today. He called in everybody, and it's a good for go. And the movie was called Waterworld. So that's how important you are. That's how important these processes are. They're not the past. They're not the past. If you acknowledge yourself as a time traveler, if you acknowledge yourself as understanding what light means, you know, even the non-natives can tell you, if you look at the human skin through an electron microscope and you go down to the subatomic level, there's photons. And what the are photons? That's light, you know? So be that light. There's plenty of us that are coming out of the darkness. Thank you so much. Hi.